There comes a point in every life when clinging feels heavier than the pain of release. Maybe it's the weight of a relationship long past its prime. Maybe it's the echo of a childhood wound that still dictates your worth. Or perhaps it's the story you've told yourself about success, love, or who you must be in the eyes of the world. You carry it silently, stoically, because letting go feels like a kind of death. And yet, as Friedrich Nietzsche once whispered from the abyss of his solitude, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. But what he didn't always say so directly is this: before the star can dance, the chaos must first be faced, and let go of. Letting go is not weakness. It is not failure. It is a profound act of rebellion in a world obsessed with control, permanence, and possession. We live in an age where holding on is romanticized. 2 jobs, K's 2 identities, 2 people, even to pain, as if endurance were always nobler than release. Social media teaches us to never give up, to fight for what we want, and to manifest our desires into reality. But what if that fight is killing your spirit? What if the thing you're clinging to is no longer yours to carry? This is not a modern dilemma. The fear of surrender has echoed through human history. From the Buddhist renunciation of attachment to the Stoic discipline of releasing what we cannot control. From the Sufis' burning longing to dissolve in the beloved, to Nietzsche's cry for the Bermensch, the one who creates meaning out of ashes. The tension between holding and letting go is as old as time. Nietzsche, for all his thunder and fire, was a man deeply acquainted with grief. His philosophy wasn't born from comfort. It was forged in abandonment, illness, and philosophical exile. Yet, out of that pain emerged a radical truth. The self is not something to be preserved, but something to be overcome, again and again. In this video, we will explore what it truly means to let go, through Nietzsche's eyes, through psychological insight, and through the mirror of your own experience. Because letting go is not just an act. It is a power, a silent, sacred, soul-altering power. And in a world built on grabbing, grasping, and gasping for control, surrender may be the most rebellious thing you can do. So, what if the freedom you seek isn't found in holding on, but in the graceful, terrifying, beautiful act of letting go? Letting go as an ancient power. From myth to Nietzsche, we even understood psychology. Humanity understood suffering. We sang it in hymns, etched it in stone, wove it into myths. And one of the most enduring sources of suffering across time and place has been the inability to let go. Long before Nietzsche walked the mountains of Sils Maria, philosophers, poets, and mystics wrestled with this question. What happens when a person clings to something that is no longer meant for them? In the East, Buddhism offered a piercing insight. Attachment is the root of all suffering. This was not a call to apathy, but to liberation. To let go of craving, not desire. To let go of control, not engagement. The Buddhist monk didn't retreat because he was afraid of the world, but because he was no longer enslaved by it. In ancient Stoicism, we see a similar thread. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." To the Stoics, control was an illusion. The wise man accepts what he cannot change and focuses only on what he can: his judgments, his choices, his character. This is the first form of letting go, releasing the illusion of control over the external world. But Nietzsche's rebellion was different. He didn't want to detach from life. He wanted to descend into it. Where the Buddha urged release, Nietzsche urged reclamation. Where Stoicism prized serenity, Nietzsche prized transformation. And yet, they were not opposites. They were shadows of the same truth. Because in Nietzsche's world, letting go wasn't about turning away. It was about transcending. It was about burning the past to forge a self that is terrifyingly free. He wrote, "What does your conscience say? You shall become the person you are." But here's the catch. You cannot become who you are if you are still hostage to who you were. To understand Nietzsche's demand for transformation, we have to understand his context. Nietzsche lived in a 19th century Europe gripped by decay. The moral order of Christianity was crumbling. Science had dethroned God. Industrialization alienated the soul. And amid this crisis, Nietzsche saw a culture that was still desperately clinging to old values, values of obedience, guilt, and quiet suffering. He called it the slave morality, a mindset rooted in resentment, where people held on to pain, victimhood, powerlessness as badges of righteousness. Nietzsche's solution wasn't comfort, okay? It was the fire of the Mensch, the one who dares to let go of inherited values, burned out beliefs, even identity itself, to create something utterly new. In his masterpiece, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he doesn't give you a 10-step plan for happiness. He gives you a mountain, a desert, and a madman. He gives you a death, the death of the ego, the death of the old you. The psychological metaphor is clear. Letting go is not an accessory to self-growth. It is the self-growth. And Nietzsche knew how hard that was. He knew how much we cling to relationships that no longer serve us, to ideologies that have expired, to guilt passed down from generations. Even his own life was a study in letting go, of academic prestige, of friends like Wagner who betrayed his ideals, of physical health as his body slowly crumbled under disease. Yet he never became bitter. He let go again and again, not out of despair, but defiance. He once said, "I love those who do not know how to live, for they are the ones who are going under." Because in going under and dying to the false self, the real self might be born. This is where Nietzsche departs from traditional religion. He doesn't promise salvation in the afterlife. He challenges you to create meaning here, now, through the very act of release and rebirth. And this isn't just philosophy, it's mythology, it's psychology. It's the story of the phoenix, burned to ash, reborn in flame. It's the story of Osiris, dismembered, scattered, reassembled. It's Jesus on the cross, crying out in abandonment, only to rise in transformation. And in every story, the power is not in clinging to life, but in surrendering to something greater. In modern times, we've dressed this ancient truth in new clothes. We speak of emotional baggage, trauma, limiting beliefs. But at the heart of it all is the same timeless question. Can you let go of what no longer serves you? Not just to feel lighter, but to become someone new. Because letting go is not forgetting. It is remembering who you are without the weight. It is remembering that your story is not the pain you survived, but the strength you chose in response. Nietzsche's brilliance was that he gave us permission, even command, to become the artists of our own lives, to sculpt our character, not from tradition, but from fire. And that sculpting, that rebirth, always begins with the death of what must be let go. So the question Nietzsche leaves us with is not, what are you holding on to? But, what are you afraid to become if you finally let go? The mind that clings. Why letting go feels like dying. Letting go is not just hard, it's terrifying. It threatens the deepest part of our psychology, the part that craves certainty, familiarity, and identity. To let go of something, a person, a belief, a job, a dream, is to invite the unknown. And the unknown is the domain the ego fears most. Modern psychology gives this a name: ego preservation. The ego is not evil. It's a psychological structure designed to keep you safe. It says, you are this, and clings to stories that define you, even if they're painful. I am the one who was abandoned. I am the one who must succeed to be loved. I am the one who always gives more than I receive. These narratives become like oxygen, and when we try to release them, our nervous system panics. Why? Because to the mind, identity is survival. Even if the identity is forged in trauma. Here's where Nietzsche was ahead of his time. He saw that suffering wasn't just external, it was internalized. People didn't just live under the oppression of systems, they lived under the oppression of their own inner tyrants. Guilt, shame, resentment. Nietzsche called this resentment the poison of the soul that cannot let go, and instead turns pain into blame. The slave morality he condemned was not literal slavery, but a psychological state of learned helplessness. And here's where the link to modern trauma psychology is profound. In trauma theory, it's a concept known as emotional freezing. When we go through a painful experience, especially one that feels inescapable, we often dissociate. We freeze. The body survives, but the emotion gets locked away. Years later, we're still carrying it, unknowingly, like emotional scar tissue. We call this baggage, but Nietzsche might have called it a burial. It's a burial of the real self beneath stories of pain we never processed from a Jungian lens. These unprocessed wounds sink into the shadow, the part of ourselves we exile, but the shadow doesn't stay quiet. It shows up in our relationships, our self-sabotage, our emotional reactivity. And until we confront it, we cannot let go. Not truly. So why do we cling? Because letting go means touching the wound. Oh, it means grieving what we never grieved. It means stepping into an identity not shaped by the past, but by conscious choice. Nietzsche saw this. He saw that the path to becoming who you are is not paved in affirmations. It's paved in fire. The snake which cannot shed its skin must die. This is not cruelty, it's transformation. Modern therapeutic methods like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or internal family systems, IFS, offer tools to approach this transformation. CBT helps us examine the beliefs we're holding on to, often irrational or distorted, and gently reframe them. IFS teaches us that our psyche is made up of parts, some wounded, some protective, and that healing happens when we listen to these parts with compassion rather than trying to silence them. But even these therapies, in their essence, echo what Nietzsche was pointing toward. The self is not fixed. It is not singular. It is a process. And to evolve, the self must release what no longer aligns. On a societal level, letting go becomes even more complex. We're not just individuals with personal pain. We are cultural beings shaped by collective trauma. We inherit beliefs from our families, our religions, our histories. Nietzsche warned that blindly inheriting morality leads to stagnation. A life lived in reaction rather than creation. He demanded that we revalue all values, to question, to doubt, to destroy, not out of nihilism, but to make space for something authentic. This is echoed in the psychological concept of individuation, Carl Jung's term for the process of becoming an integrated self. Individuation is not about perfection. It's about wholeness. And wholeness only comes when we embrace, examine, and eventually release the identities that no longer serve our growth. Nietzsche's Mensch is not a superhero. He's the one who dares to live without a script. He does not cling to societal praise. He does not define himself by tradition. He lets go of even his own certainty in order to stay alive to possibility. In a strange way, modern neuroscience supports this too. Studies show that neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, depends on our ability to release old patterns. When we practice mindfulness, when we reframe stories, when we choose presence over the past, our brains literally rewire. Letting go isn't just spiritual, it's biological. Don't mistake this for ease. The brain, like the ego, resists change. The amygdala, our fear center, lights up when we face uncertainty. The default mode network, associated with rumination, kicks in when we're alone. Our biology pulls us toward familiarity, even if familiarity is misery. So letting go is not passive, firing. It is an act of courage. It is staring into the void of the unknown and choosing to believe that something better, something freer, lies on the other side. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He wrote, "Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth, because they don't want their illusions destroyed. But without that destruction, there is no new life. Letting go, then, is not weakness. It is the beginning of self-authorship. It is where therapy meets philosophy, where science meets soul, and in a world drowning in distraction, dopamine, and digital validation. Letting go of what doesn't serve us might be the most radical act of freedom. When you don't let go, you don't just hold on, you hold yourself back. There is a quiet kind of suffering that doesn't scream. It doesn't show up as blood or bruises, but as hesitation, as a tightness in your chest, as the silent feeling that you're living someone else's life. That suffering often comes from one thing: the refusal or fear of letting go. On the surface, this might look like staying in a toxic relationship, chasing a dream that no longer fits, or carrying guilt that no longer belongs to you. But on a deeper level, it's something more tragic. A soul imprisoned by the illusion of who it's supposed to be. Nietzsche understood this well. He watched an entire society cling to worn-out ideas of morality, virtue, and truth, not because they worked, but because they were comfortable. Because the alternative, stepping into the chaos of the unknown, felt too frightening. But when you don't let go, here's what happens. 1. Your identity becomes a tomb. You end up performing a version of yourself that's no longer real. The achiever who never rests. The martyr who always says yes. The loyal lover who stays, even when love has died. You wear these roles like a costume, okay? And eventually, you forget there's a real person underneath. Nietzsche warned against this herd instinct, the tendency to conform, to stay safe within the expectations of others. But safety has a cost. Liveness. 2. Your relationships suffer. When you cling to old wounds or unresolved pain, you bring them into every relationship, like invisible ghosts, okay? You may overreact, pull away, or expect others to fill a void that's not theirs to fill, okay? You may cling to toxic people because the pain feels familiar. You may sabotage intimacy because it threatens the identity you've built around loneliness or independence. Psychology calls this attachment trauma, and it's real. But Nietzsche saw it as something more existential. He believed we must take radical ownership of our suffering, not to blame ourselves, but to free ourselves from it. Because no one can let go for you. You are the gatekeeper of your own release. 3. You become addicted to pain. Yes, addicted. When we hold on to anger, resentment, guilt, or even nostalgia, we get a kind of emotional high. There's a strange comfort in familiar suffering. It gives us a story. It gives us meaning. It gives us a shield. But Nietzsche asked, what if your pain is not who you are? What if it's just a phase that you refused to outgrow? In his writing, he constantly returned to this idea. We are not static beings. We are becoming. In pain, if not transformed, becomes a form of self-imprisonment. For you, block the flow of life. Imagine a river. If you build a dam, the water stagnates. It turns murky, still, and lifeless. This is what happens when you refuse to let go. You block the natural current of change, growth, and emotional renewal. Nietzsche's famous concept of the eternal recurrence, the idea that you must live your life as if you would live it again and again, is a brutal invitation to examine this. Would you really want to repeat this moment, this pattern, this emotional stuckness, forever? If not, something must change. And change always requires letting go. 5. You miss the real you. This is perhaps the most painful consequence of all. By holding on to what's safe, a trauma, okay, an outdated dream, you silence the deeper voice inside, the one that whispers, there's more to you than this. There's a deeper strength, a wilder love, a freer joy waiting to be lived. But it cannot emerge while your hands are full. It cannot reach you if you're still clinging to something or someone that was only meant to be part of your story, not the whole of it. Nietzsche believed in becoming, not becoming perfect, not becoming invincible, but becoming real, raw, vivid, brutally honest with oneself. In Exe Homo, he asked the world to look at his life, filled with illness, rejection, heartbreak, and yet still see it as blessed. Because through the pain, through the letting go, he found something the world could not give. A self forged in fire, a freedom no applause could buy. And yet, so many of us delay that freedom. We wait. We wait for the perfect moment to release. We wait until the pain becomes unbearable. We wait until someone else gives us permission to move on. But the truth is, no moment will ever feel perfect. Letting go always feels like loss before it feels like liberation. There's a Sufi story that illustrates this beautifully. A man is hanging from a branch off the side of a cliff, terrified. He sees a figure appear above and asks for help. The figure says, "Let go." Okay. The man clutches tighter. "Let go." The voice repeats. Finally, the man releases his grip and realizes the ground was only 2 inches below his feet the whole time. That's the nature of fear. It magnifies the fall. But often, what's waiting below is not destruction. It's ground. It's foundation. It's the beginning of something new. So what happens when we don't let go? We delay our becoming, shrink from our own power. We trade growth for familiarity and call it loyalty. But most of all, we miss the quiet miracle of transformation. Not because it's rare, but because we were too afraid to trust its process. And maybe that's what Nietzsche meant all along. Not that life is about achievement, not even happiness, but the courage to face your pain and let it teach you how to be free, how to let go when every part of you wants to hold on. Letting go is not a decision you make once, it's a practice. You return to every time life asks you to choose between fear and freedom. Nietzsche never gave us step-by-step instructions. He gave us metaphors, provocations, and fire. But woven into his writing is a recurring theme. Creation begins with destruction. To become who you truly are, you must first burn what is no longer you. But how do you do that practically? How do you let go of the stories, people, beliefs, and emotions that have shaped you, sometimes for years? Here are practices drawn from psychology, spirituality, and Nietzsche's own defiant wisdom to help you begin. 1. Witness without judgment, the inner Zarathustra. Before you can let go of anything, you must see it. Nietzsche's Zarathustra retreats to the mountains, not to escape life, but to reflect. The mountain becomes a metaphor for inner distance, the ability to look at your life from above. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. No distractions, no goals. Ask yourself, what am I clinging to right now? What belief is shaping how I see myself? Is it true? Or is it just familiar? Don't judge what comes up. Just witness it. This is the foundation of mindfulness, the practice of becoming the observer rather than the actor. Psychologically, this activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that allows for clarity, regulation, and reflection. Spiritually, it opens the door to grace. 2. Grieve the loss, because letting go is a death. Nietzsche understood that all transformation involves pain. You can't become without leaving something behind, and that hurts. We often resist letting go because we confuse it with betrayal. Letting go of a toxic parent feels like disloyalty. Letting go of a failed dream feels like failure. Letting go of a past identity feels like erasure. But it's none of these. It's grief, pure and sacred. Practice. Write a letter to the thing you're letting go. Thank it. Honor it. Name the role it played. Then say goodbye. Burn it, bury it, or simply place it in a drawer. Ritual matters. Grieving isn't weakness. It's how the soul makes space for something new. 3. Reclaim the will to power, but inward. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power is often misunderstood. It's not about domination. It's about inner mastery. It's the courage to choose your values instead of inheriting them. Shape your life, not by reaction, but by creation. This is where journaling plus cognitive behavioral therapy align with Nietzschean philosophy. When you name your thoughts, challenge them, and choose a new belief, you are exercising the will to power over your own narrative. Practice. Ask yourself, what belief have I inherited that no longer serves me? What emotion am I afraid to feel? What would I do today if I trusted the version of me that's trying to be born? Write freely. No censoring. This is not for others. It's for your becoming. 4. Use Stoic anchors, letting go of control. Nietzsche respected the Stoics even as he broke from them. He saw the value in amor fati, the love of fate. Where the Stoics sought serenity, Nietzsche sought transformation. Still, there is power in Stoic practices that support the letting go process. Try this. Each morning, remind yourself, I control only my thoughts and responses. Everything else is not mine to grasp. What I lose is making room for what I must become. This daily mindset frees the nervous system. When the brain feels safe, it's more willing to release what it clings to. 5. Create something new. Nietzsche's path of becoming. Letting go is not just about release, it's about creation. Nietzsche didn't want you to simply be empty. He wanted you to fill that space with something bold, wild, and true. That's why he said, man is a rope stretched between the animal and the bermensch, a rope over an abyss. You are the rope. You are the abyss, and the only way forward is forward. Practice. Make one act of creative defiance each day. Write something. Say no. Say yes. Apply for something. Walk away. Do one small thing that says, I am not my past. Every act of creation is an act of letting go. 6. Embody the shift, because the body remembers. Psychological pain lives in the body. Trauma is not just a memory. It's a posture, a breath pattern, clenched jaw. You cannot think your way into letting go. You have to feel it out of your system. Practice colon movement, yoga, stance, walking, freeze, stuck emotion grounding practices. Walk barefoot, touch earth, feel real time. Let your body become the place where letting go happens physically, not just conceptually. 7. Return to the present moment, the only place you're free. Nietzsche's writings were full of wild visions, deserts, mountains, gods, and abyss. But what he taught again and again was to live fully in the now, not in hope, not in nostalgia, but in the brutal beauty of the present moment. Because the present is the only place where you are not a prisoner of what was. Practice. Whenever you notice yourself spiraling, stop, touch something around you. Take a breath. Say, this is what I know. This is what is. This is where I begin. This is the sacred rebellion, to return to now again and again. Final note. Letting go is not clean. It's not linear. Some days you'll feel strong, like you've broken free. The days the old pain will creep in, whispering its familiar lies. That's okay. The power is not in never slipping back. The power is in recognizing it, choosing again. Nietzsche never promised comfort, but he promised this: freedom is worth the fire. You are not just letting go. You are clearing space for the life that was always meant for you. The one not rooted in clinging, but in becoming. Letting go is how the soul breathes. At some point, you must stop asking the world who you are. You must stop measuring your worth by what stays. What applauds, what clings to you in return, because not everything you lose is a failure. Some things leave because they've done their work. Some people walk away because they've played their part in your story. And some versions of you, they were only ever meant to be stepping stones to something deeper. It's honoring it, then stepping beyond it. Nietzsche understood that to truly live, we must be willing to die many small deaths. Not of the body, but of the ego, of the false self, of the need to be seen a certain way, or to hold on to something out of fear. In his solitude, sickness, and sorrow, he discovered something profound. Freedom does not begin when everything is under control. It begins when you surrender control and still choose to create. We are, each of us, artists, not of canvas, but of identity. We shape who we are, not through what we accumulate, but through what we release. We become wise, not when we know everything, but when we're no longer afraid to let go of the things that no longer serve us. Look at the natural world. The tree sheds its leaves. The snake sheds its skin. The river lets go of every drop that passes. So why do we, with our vast minds and tender hearts, think we must grip every pain, every title, every expectation till it breaks us? Letting go is not giving up. It's giving in to reality, to grace, to growth. It is not the end of your power. It is the beginning of it. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." He wasn't just speaking of strength. He was speaking of purpose. The kind of purpose that only emerges once you've cleared away the noise, the clutter, the shoulds. When you let go, your why becomes louder. Your steps become lighter. Your soul starts to move again. And no, it won't always feel beautiful at first. It may feel like emptiness, like something was stolen. But that emptiness, that silence, that's not the absence of life. It's the space for new life to enter. Oh, are not who you were. And you are not yet who you will be. But in this moment, as you choose to let go, you are becoming. What is your soul asking you to release so you can rise? Because maybe the real power was never in the holding. Maybe it was always in the letting go. If this message stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a truth you once knew but forgot, then let this be your sign. Not to chase more, not to fix yourself, but to release what no longer fits the soul you are becoming. In a world addicted to noise, clinging, and constant striving, you have the courage to let go and begin again. So if this video found you at the right time, I invite you to do something simple but powerful. Pause, breathe, reflect, and if you feel called, share this with someone who's quietly suffering under the weight of things they need to release. You never know what silent battle someone is fighting and how one quiet truth can help them heal. If you like more content like this, rooted in psychology, ancient philosophy, soulful reflection, subscribe and join this growing community of deep thinkers, seekers, and creators together. We're not here to chase perfection. We're here to remember who we truly are and live with honesty, courage, and depth. Until next time, stay awake, stay brave, and never forget, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let go.